Gibson, karma's a bitch, isn't it? And you deserve every bit of this. I'm going to give some kudos out there to a local guitar manufacturer down here in South Florida. They're actually based out of the Tampa area. It's Dean Guitars, baby. And yesterday, they released some important information about a judge basically told Gibson to go shove it. Who knows who Gibson bought out? You know that's how this works, right? Big corporations, big money going against a little guy. Dean punched back, and they punched the bully back square in the face. Went for a Mike Tyson punch-out, baby. And I'm so happy. You know, I always thought that lawsuit was ridiculous. Gibson going after manufacturers for supposedly stealing their iconic drawings or whatever you want to call it, whatever the crap it's called. I don't give a crap what it's called. You know, this iconic drawing of an Explorer or a Flying V. Now, they were unique, all right? But if you're going to do that, you do it right away. Had they done that back in the 70s when this started, some people would have probably been somewhat more understanding. But they didn't. They waited decades later before they did it. You know, the hardcore reality is every single Gibson Explorer I've ever laid my hands on has played like a baseball bat. Every Gibson Flying V I've ever put in my hands plays like a baseball bat. They're just not for me. Other people may like them, but they're not for me, not from Gibson. Every single Explorer shape I played from Hamer, or every single Explorer shape I played from Dean, has been out freaking standing. So at the end of the day, Gibson, why don't you just focus on making better, higher quality instruments than going and crying to your mama? Oh man, this really irks me. I'm so glad Dean is winning this. You know, it already put this whole thing had some play in putting Hamer out of business. Let's face it. From what I've seen, I don't know this as fact, but I've only seen Gibson really do an Explorer right and a Flying V right one time, and that was their Benchmark series. And they were I'm talking about just aesthetics. I never got a chance to play one of those. I'm only talking aesthetics, okay? And they were on par with what Hamer and Gibson had been doing with those shapes. Not Hamer and Gibson, Hamer and Dean with those shapes. Gibson, if you wanted to beat them, you had the name. Why didn't you just make better guitars? The only reason those companies rose with those particular shapes is they were, quite frankly, leaps and bounds better. For those of you that have been around the block like me a long time, you know in the 70s, practically everything Gibson put out was total freaking garbage, okay? And by the time the 80s got here, playing a Les Paul, you were like an outcast if you were even seen holding a Les Paul. You know, there were exceptions, of course, Randy Rhoads being one of them. But the reality is nobody wanted that, mainly because of Eddie Van Halen broke away with the S-style shaped guitar, which we all know is a Fender Strat. But ultimately, he didn't use a Fender Strat, but ultimately that shape, and that's what blew it out. It wasn't until the 90s, really the mid to late 90s came back around where kind of the Gibson Les Paul was back in vogue and really has remained so for much of that time. But really from 2010, 2015, for like 10 or 15 years, the quality control at Gibson was hit or miss. Everybody knows it. Everybody knows it. Now, I'm going to tell you, I'm looking at right over there. I've got a Hamer Standard, an Explorer-shaped guitar, okay? Right there, I've got a Gibson Les Paul. Right there, I've got a Gibson SG, Fender Tele. I got a Gibson Double Cut back there, and I've got a Sir and a Tom Anderson back there. And then I've got a Taylor 914 over there, all right? So, look, I like Gibson guitars. I do. The two best guitars in here are my Sir and my Tom Anderson, hands down, without question. So I'm glad you won, Dean. I'm really glad you won. You deserve this because, quite frankly, it was you and Hamer who turned those shapes into iconic masterpieces that they became. And Dean even took it further with expanded shapes. We all know Dimebag Darrell was a huge Dean endorser and a Dean fan. And I'm proud to say that they're based here in Central Florida, over in the Tampa, St. Pete area. And I think it's fantastic that they're winning at this game, right? And I can't wait. And you know what I'm going to do? Do you know, I had no intention of buying another guitar. No intention whatsoever. But here's what I'm going to do. The very second they start making that Explorer shape again, I'm going to buy one. I don't care if it's $5,000. I'm going to find a way to buy it. I'll work double, triple, quadruple, whatever I got to do. I'm going to buy it just to make a point. That's the kind of guy I am. So Dean, kudos to you. I'm very happy you did this. Very, 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 very happy. And Gibson, you're a pathetic corporate greed piece of garbage who's been trying to right that ship for decades. And even though sometimes it seems like they're on the right course, but when they pull this lawsuit out and this nonsense out, you little greedy mofo, drives me nuts. Really gets to me to the core. You're just selfish, greedy little punks as far as I'm concerned. And here's one thing I will never do again. I personally, you can make your choices out there for you, but I'm only talking about me. My channel, I get to say what I feel. If you disagree, it's fine. But I will never, ever, ever buy another Gibson product. Ever, ever, ever again. You're going to get 10 times the quality out of PRS, okay? 10 times the quality out of Sir, 10 times the quality of Tom Anderson, 10 times the quality out of Nags, 10 times the quality out of Dean. And I wish you could get it with Hamer still today, but you can't, unfortunately. It's sad. It's very sad. But at the end of the day, the little guy wins. The bully gets smacked right in the face and knocked to the ground, and we're all just sitting here looking down at your pathetic little sad face and smiling.